In this video, we are going to create two types of tags, namely a tag that is of type float and another pi tag which is a digital tag along with its digital sets. Once they are created, we are going to switch on the pi interface for OPC DA and make sure that the values are coming to the pi data archive. So to do this, let's first go to our designated pi interface node, which is pi int1. Let's go to start, all programs, pi system, and select pi interface configuration utility. Once the application opens up, go to the drop down and select the instance of the pi interface for OPC DA that we had earlier created. In here, kindly note the following parameters, which we are going to utilize when we start creating the pi points on the pi data archive. The information that we require are the name of the point source, which is OPC, interface ID, which is equal to 1, which corresponds to location number 1 on the pi point attribute configuration, and location 4 corresponds to the scan class which you want to choose. So let's choose scan class 4. So let's choose OPC as the point source, interface ID is equal to 1, of course, and scan class we are going to choose number 4, which is for every 2 seconds. Now that we have ascertained the information which we require one other information. The other information that we require is the so-called instrument tag. To do this, let's open up the OPC client utility which is there on your desktop, right click and say run as administrator. Once the application opens up, we know that our OPC server resides on the same node, so localhost is okay. Click on this button. Let's select this OPC server, double click, which should highlight the yellow button, which is this. Click on the yellow button, say create. Now we are going to explore the contents of the OPC server. So we are going to browse the OPC server, double click and expand and click on pump 1. Select all and add to the list. So the first tag which we are going to create on the pi data archive, let's choose flow rate. So whatever you see here is so-called the instrument tag which we need to utilize when we configure the pi point for flow rate. So let's copy this. And now what we need to do is now we need to go to our pi data archive server. Once we are on the pi data archive, which is pi srv1, let's open up pi system management tools by going to start all programs, pi system, and selecting pi system management tools. Once we are in pi system management tools, open up points and select point builder. So we are going to create the first pi tag of type float. So here we can name this as pump1 dot flow rate. We note that the point source which we have configured on the pi interface for OPC DA is OPC. So let's put OPC as the point source. Now let's go to the classic tab. We know that our interface ID that we are configured on the pi interface for OPC DA instance is 1. So let's select 1. Location 4 we know for this particular pi interface or OPC DA is corresponding to the scan class. We decided that we are going to choose scan class number 4, and we just want to paste the instrument tag. Kindly note that the name of the instrument tag is case sensitive and also space sensitive. So if you do make a mistake, you won't be able to retrieve data from the data source. So it needs to be exact. So we have the point security and data security using this pi identity which we created. That's fine. So we have provided with all the required information. Let's click save. With this operation, we have created our first pi tag of type float. Now let's create the digital tags. So let's obtain the instrument tag for the digital tag which we are going to create. So for that, let's go back to our pi interface node, which is pi int1. Once we are in pi int1, let's go back to our OPC client. Let's explore. Go to pump1, select all and add to the list. So the tag which we are going to create is the status tag. So let's copy this. This is the instrument tag which we are going to utilize. And let's go back to our PyData archive, which is PySRV1. So once we are on PySRV1, since this is a digital tag, we just need to create upfront the digital states. So click on the digital states. Then from the white space and say right click and say add set. Let's call this as pump status. So we are going to provide it with the table. So if a value of 0 comes from the data source, it's going to be translated into sluggish. Likewise, if the value of 1 is going to be translated as low, 2 means normal, 3 means high, and let's call 4 as go for it, just as an example. And now then we just need to click on the save button, which is at the top, so that we can save this pump status. Now let's go back to the point builder, and now we are going to create another new tag. So click on the new tag creation button. Now we are going to call this one as pump1 dot status. We know that the point source is OPC, and from the point type we are going to toggle it to digital. Now it forces you to select the corresponding digital set. So since this is not here yet, we just need to click on the refresh button at the top. So once we click on the refresh button, we should be able to see the pump status. So here we have created a name, we have defined a point source, we said point type is digital, and digital set is pump status. Let's go back again to the classic tab. Location 1 is equal to 1, which corresponds to the interface ID. Location 4 corresponds to the scan class which you are going to use. And for the instrument tag, since we already have it copied, we can just paste it. Pump sample process / pump1 dot status. And security also is enabled. So with this, let's click save. So with this, we have just created 2 pi points. Now the last aspect which we want to do is start the instance of pi interface or OPC DA and check whether the values are coming to the PyData archive. So let's make a preparation. Let's go to data, current values, and let's search for tags by clicking on the tag search button. Now we can refine our search based upon point source, in which case here it is OPC. We can click on the search button. It is going to bring the 2 tags. We can select all and say OK. And then we can click on the start loading button and keep it ready. Right now it has a status called point created. Now let's go back to our pi interface node, which is pi int1, and start our pi interface for OPC DA. Now let's get back to our interface configuration utility, which we just minimized. And before starting any Pi interface, we just also want to have the record of the Pi message logs. So click on this icon. Now let's expand this a little bit so that we can see all the long messages. And then we can just come here and click the Start Interface Service button. It has found the 2 tags which we created on the Pi data archive. And let's see whether it is able to connect to the data source. And it says it's able to connect to the data source. It's a successful API connection to the Pi data archive, namely PySRP1. So now let's go to our Pi data archive and check whether the data is coming in. So let's open up the Pi system management tool, which we just minimized. And as you can see, we are getting values and it is changing. And so in this video, what we did was we created 2 types of tags, one being of type float and another being a digital tag along with its digital sets. And then we started the Pi interface for OPC-DA, confirmed the message logs that it's going through the proper startup process, and finally we confirmed that the data is also coming to the Pi data archive.